Introduce myself. My name is Tricia McDonald, and I actually own a publishing company called Splattered Press. We're different from traditional publishers in that authors come to us and they have a book that they want to get published, but they want to self-publish it. But they don't know, they aren't an artist, and so they don't know about doing the cover, or they don't know how to lay out the book. So we charge them a flat fee to develop their book for them. We do their cover and do the layout, get their ISBN number, get their barcode, and have a printer that we work with so that we can do hard copy prints or ebooks. And we've been doing that for about 7 years. And a little more about my background, I have 4 books that I've written about my dog Sally, who is a miniature bull terrier. I lost her last March, be just about a year, when she was 12 years old. But before that, I'd been writing for a magazine called Cats and Dogs Magazine. Are any of you familiar with that? You see it at veterinarian offices and libraries. So I wrote about Sally for about 10 months there, and the books are collections of those stories. Stories about her. Initially, they were stories about her that I was trying to set up, like taking her to a doggy massage person. And eventually, it was just stories about her being a dog that people could relate to. And now we have a new dog named Willow, and so I'm writing in that same magazine for Life with Willow. So I have those 4 books out, and the way I got into publishing was the first book I wrote about Sally. I figured it was just going to be a local book, so I didn't want to try to go through a traditional publisher. I didn't want the time, and so I decided that I could do it all myself, and it was a disaster, but I did get the book done, and since then, the book is done. We've sold it internationally, both as an ebook and as a hard copy. And I had people coming to me and asking me, how did you do this, and can you teach me? And that's when we decided to open up Splattered Press. So I wanted to talk to you today about publishing. And there's a ton of information about publishing. So I'm wondering if any of you have specific questions about publishing that maybe we could start with, and then I'll know which direction to go. Anyone? Bueller? No? Anything about writing? What? You're here for extra credit, so you don't really even care? So any questions about, yeah? No. So publishing academic books? I'm sorry, is that what was your question? So give me a little bit more about what you mean by academic books. Like books that would be sold in schools?
Say we're studying a certain subject, say engineering. Where would we search for new publishing?
New books about engineering. That's a good question, and I have no idea. I mean, other than Google, that's where I would start looking. Actually, the books that we've done have not been academic books at all. Fiction, memoirs, children's picture books. Those are more of the books that we've done. So, I would suggest that you could do a search for publishers of academic books. And then I think that eventually that would lead you to the publishers that deal specifically in academic publishing. So is everybody here for extra credit for your class? Yeah? No? Yes? Okay. So we could talk about anything then, right? Or do you have to take notes and go back to your teacher and say oh man. So what could we talk about that would be really interesting but still give you some extra credit information? So how many of you in here have pets? Dogs, cats? Cats? Dogs? Dog? Yeah. So how many of you in here are writers? Yeah. A couple of you? Yeah. What do you write? Yeah, poetry. Fiction, poetry, or fiction and poetry? Yeah. All right. What do you write? Do you? Okay. Have you had anything published? Are you interested in it ever getting published? Publishing? You publishing a chapbook or something of your poetry? Yeah. All right, I'm just going to go into my spiel then. And if you guys want to interrupt me at any time, or if you start falling asleep, please like jump up and down or tell me I'm being really boring, all right? Basically, now's the best time if you're an author and you want to publish, because we have self-publishing is a positive now, where years ago it was seen as very negative. It was seen as very negative because usually covers look like they were done by a 5-year-old. And the inside pages were just like those mimeograph ones. And so self-publishing was seen as a very negative way to get your book out there. So the traditional publishers had the corner on publishing books. And it was very difficult to get a book published with a traditional publisher unless you were a big name. You know, you see books out there by famous people all the time, and that's because the publishers know that their books will sell based on their name and not whether the book's any good or not. So traditional publishing are the big publishing houses, Random House, and the way you get to them with your book is through an agent. So you have to find an agent that will take you on, and the way you find an agent is you find somebody that is interested in your type of book. Fiction, maybe a novel, poetry, sci-fi, nonfiction, and then you have to send what's known as a query letter, which is Query, to the agent, and basically that letter is a letter that says, please represent me. And they're very strict with how long the letter can be. It can only be a page long. And it has to tell them about your book. It has to grab them about your book and also about you as an author. A lot of agents that I know, the majority of agents that are snobs, although they're finding now that the publishing world is opening up, that they're not as queen bee or as they used to be. 10 years ago, I was at a conference and two agents were talking to us. And they were saying, yeah, if you don't follow what we're telling you to do on your query letter, then we're just going to throw it away before we even read it. Because they get so many letters a day that they can just kind of pick and choose what ones they're even going to read. So that's what I mean about being snobby, you know. So once you land an agent, then the agent represents you and they go to the bigger houses. They go to the bigger houses and try to sell your book to the bigger houses. Yeah. Yeah, traditional publishing. Yeah. Most of the houses now won't even take unagented work. You know, you're going to have an agent. They won't even look at it unless an agent brings it to them. So the big thing to remember with, I think the big thing to remember with traditional publishing is that once your agent sells your book to a traditional publisher, they're going to send you money, which is, yay, I'm going to make some money. However, that money buys your rights to the book. So however long you've spent working on this book, you know, a year, 2 years, whatever, once you sign that contract with them, you have nothing else to do with that book. So that means that you have nothing to do with the cover. And you have nothing to do with any of the editing, and also you have nothing to do with how long the book stays out in the market. Yep. Usually you'll get a royalty also, but so you'll get your upfront money. And then once your book starts selling, then the percentage you get for each book has to equal what that advance was before you start making money per book. And unfortunately nowadays that number has gone down, those fees have gone down. Also, so with the marketing part of it, they expect you to be out there marketing your book, which makes sense. You're the author. You're the one most excited about the book. So you're not going to make a lot of money in royalty fees. The authors that I've talked to are making 10 cents on a book. So it's not big money, but it's, they're going to get your books out there. I mean, they're going to get your books in all of the Barnes and Nobles and, all the other places. So your books are going to be out there. They're not going to take your book. They don't care what your book is about. What they care about is, will this book make me money? So that's the bottom line. They don't care if it's a book that you put your heart and soul into it. They want to make sure that it's going to make them money, and that it's going to make them money as soon as they put it out there. So that's good and bad for the author. Because if something comes up in their big immediate push to get your book out there, something happens, then your book could flop, and then your book is gone. A friend of mine told a story about a woman she knew who sold her book to a traditional publisher. They did this big, presentation. The book is coming out, blah, blah, blah. And it happened to fall on at the same time as 9/11. So guess what was in all the papers and everywhere was of course, everything about 9/11. And so her book did not make the money that the publishing house expected it to make when it came out. And so they pulled the book after a certain period of time. They pulled the book and they put it away. And so now her book is gone, and she can't do anything about it because she doesn't own it anymore. So those are big things that you have to think about when you're working with a traditional publisher. Now the good thing is, like I said, the traditional publisher is going to have a lot more ways of getting your book out there than an author who is doing a self-published book. Are you guys all here for extra credit too? Yeah. Let me know if I get boring. Doesn't mean I'll change anything, but I'll at least know I'm boring you. So that's a traditional publisher. Let me see if I forgot anything. With a traditional publishing, one thing you want to remember is that you don't pay anything. The author pays nothing when you go with a traditional publishing house, okay? So there are obviously, because there are in every field, people who will try to take advantage of authors. Because when you're sending out query letter, you finally get an agent. There's unscrupulous agents, and they'll play on the fact that authors get excited when they sell their book, or when they get an agent. And so they'll tell you, you send your query letter to them, they'll write you back and say, oh yeah, you've got this great book and I really want to represent you, but it needs some editing and I'd be glad to edit it for you for X amount of dollars. Well, now you're paying them. And they're supposed to be making money off you, okay? They're supposed to be making their money when they sell your book to a publishing house. So anytime you get an agent that's saying, oh yeah, I'll do this and this and this, then you should say no thanks and look for another agent. Because you should not be paying money if you're an author going through a traditional publisher. If you get an agent that says, I want to represent you and I need to make copies of your book, so I need you to pay for making copies of the book, and they seem legit, then that's not a big deal. But if they're saying, it needs to be rewritten, I'd be glad to do this, or any other expenses, then you should turn around and run the other way. So that is traditional publishing. So basically you have no control because you sell your book. The other way of self-publishing now is where the author does everything, which is what I did with my first Sally book. Luckily for me, my son is a graphic artist, so I got him to do the cover. And then I went to Google and Googled how to lay out a book. And I was able to find a program that helped me to lay out the book. Of course, it seemed like every time I laid it out and then saved it, it didn't save, and when I went back to it the next time. So there was a lot of cursing, and there was a lot of cursing, and there was a lot of kicking and throwing things, and basically a lot of temper tantrum going on in the house. But I was bound and determined I was going to get this thing done. And I did, but it was a lot of work, and I said I would never do it again because it was so much work. But I got are you here for extra credit too? Okay. So is everybody else. I just want to check in. So I could even auction off these notes at some point for people who aren't taking notes. You could take them back to your professor. So with the person doing everything themselves, you need to know a lot. You need to learn how to lay out the book. You've got to hire somebody to do the cover, because you want to hire someone who's professional to do the cover, because if you don't have the whole saying of, never judge a book by its cover, that's a lie. Everybody judges a book by its cover. I do all the time. If I go to the bookstore, I'm looking at books and I'm like, that one looks boring, that one looks boring. It's all based on the cover, because I don't have anything, that and the title. But if it's got a good title but an ugly cover, I'm not going to buy it. And probably most of you are the same way. So you have to make sure that you hire somebody that's professional to do your cover. So you've got to pay that. You've got to learn how to do your own layout. You've got to buy, where and how to buy ISBN numbers. You have to get a barcode, because they won't sell your book anywhere if you don't have a barcode. So there's a lot to learn when you're doing your own book, which is why most authors don't do their own book. They find the intermediaries, which is what Splattered Press is. So when someone comes to us and they have a book, first of all, we look at the book, and if it's not been professionally edited, then we want them to get it professionally edited, or we'll do it for a cost. How many of you have been reading a book and all of a sudden you start finding misspelled words? Yeah. Does it make you think even a little less of the book? Ooh, that's me. All of a sudden I'm like, what the heck? Are you kidding me? They couldn't get a good editor to edit this book? So it does make a difference for people when they're reading your book, to make sure that you don't have a lot of, if you were reading a book and every page had misspelled words, you'd probably start getting tired of it, I would think. Yes, no, doesn't matter. You awake? Hello? Yeah, thanks. So you want to make sure, so when you go to a house that is like Splattered Press, which is in between traditional publishing and I'm going to do the whole damn thing myself, then you're going to go to a place that's going to charge you for these different things. So we charge for covers. My son does all our covers. We charge for layout. We lay out the book, and we do have different layouts depending on if it's fiction or if it's nonfiction. If it's children's picture book, obviously there's different ways to lay it out. We charge for illustrations, unless they bring illustrations in and they're top-notch illustrations. Because illustrations for children, people think that children's picture books are the easiest books to write. How many words on a page, right? Oh, we'll just get some pictures and slap some words on there. Actually, they're the hardest to sell, which means that the story has to be really, really, really good. And the reason it's the hardest to sell is because it's the most expensive book to print. Anytime you print color, you go to a printer and you're printing color, the cost skyrockets. So if you write a novel, you write a poetry, then you're just dealing with black and white text. But when you're dealing with children's picture books, the cost is going to be higher, the price is going to be higher, and for that reason, it has to be a really, really well-written book, which is basically the same on any book. Any book that you write has got to be a well-written book. Otherwise, don't bother publishing it, because you're just wasting your money. And you probably won't find a traditional publisher to publish it. So you first have to write a really good book. Has anybody else who came in, are any of you writers? Oh, good. What do you write? Okay, so fiction? All fiction? Yeah, good. All right, where was I? Okay, so the middle, which is what I'm talking about, the middle place is where you're going to pay for something. So what I said earlier about the author doesn't pay anything, the author is going to pay everything. And the reason you're doing this is so that you get a book, because then you're going to go out and sell that book. You are the main person that is marketing that book. You can find distributors and hook up with other people that are marketing, but you're going to be the one in the marketing chair. It's not going to be your publisher, which can be good and bad. I've spent a lot of time sitting at different events. With the Sally books, I would go to the Pet Expo and those, and pet stores and stuff, do book signings. And sometimes I had a whole bunch of people there, and sometimes I had my husband there, and that was it, or the owner of the store, or Sally. Sometimes you do really well with selling, and sometimes you don't sell anything. But you are in the driver's seat. When you do publishing with that intermediary, you own everything. You do not give up your rights. So we do your cover, but we're working with you to make sure that that's the cover you want. We're laying it out, but we make sure that that's the way you want it laid out. We're doing the ISBN number, we're doing the barcode for you, so you don't have to know any of that stuff. All you have to do is write your book, have it edited by a professional, come in. We tell you, this is our package price. You pay the package price. We get your book. At the end, we get it back to you in printed form and or ebook form. So anybody in here read? Yeah. Yay. Okay, ebooks or paper books? Paper, really? Isn't that funny? A couple of years ago, it was all the, ebooks are taking over. Nobody's going to buy paper books anymore. Anybody read both? Yeah. Yeah, I'll usually read both. It depends on where I am. Or actually, it depends on the size of book that I'm reading. I read one of Stephen King's book. He's like my favorite writer. And I read one of his books, and it was 1,000 pages. And I was like, I am not carrying this 1,000-page book around with me. And so then I read that on my Kindle. But yeah, so you like the smell of the book? That's a big thing. The feel, yeah, the feel. That's another thing when you're working with a publishing house, when you're self-publishing, is that there's all these different cool papers, that you can choose from. But but you have to make sure that you're getting something, thinking about not just what you want as the author, but what are my readers going to like, Because I like the old-looking paper, and it's really cool. It's got this great feel to it. But people that are buying Sally books basically it's a bathroom book, And so I'm not going to pay all that extra money for a book to sit in the bathroom. Although I'm thrilled that people are reading my book in the bathroom, okay? Because it means they're reading it. That's all I care about, is they're reading it, and they're buying it, and they're reading it, but I had to think about what paper is going to be good, but it's not really cool looking, but it's going to be read. So those are the 3 different types of publishing. The traditional publishing it yourself, the author does everything, and then that in between. And the in between, you have to, yay, a question. Yeah. Oh, okay. I've written 4 books. Sally was my dog. She passed away last year, but she's a miniature bull terrier. And I had her for 12 years, and I wrote 4 stories about her, 4 books, which are basically just 4, they're short stories. They're compilations of short stories about Sally. So that I refer to them as my Sally story. Sorry. Thank you for asking that, so everybody else wasn't like, what the hell is a Sally? So, yes. For publishing or for marketing? For publishing, there's some good programs for laying out your book. And of course, I'm going to not be able to think of any of them right now. That's the whole menopause thing, but I'm not here to talk about that. So, but just looking up, good publishing, good layout programs, you can find some good ones in there. The one I used for Sally was just a word no, it wasn't. What's the one? I hated it. By the end of it, I just hated it. So I probably flushed that one out of my head because I hated it so much. Marketing is its own monster, and publishing your book is the easy part. Actually, I think writing the book is the easy part, and then the publishing is the next step, but the marketing is so hard. It's so hard to get your book out there. But the way I looked at it was, you're marketing your book with a traditional publisher because they want you to go out and do book signings and talk at conferences and stuff. And they're not paying you for that anymore. They used to years ago, but they're not doing that anymore. So basically you're out there hawking their book. It's not even your book anymore, okay? So if you're marketing it for them, why wouldn't you just want to market it for yourself, where what you're getting back per book is a lot more than what you're getting, when you're selling it for someone else. There's different programs. We actually have a person that's specializing in marketing, and we'll sit down with one of our clients and go over with them a marketing plan to help them to really see who are my readers, because it would make no sense for me to go with a Sally book and go to an engineering conference, because they're not my readers. And that's why I'm going to animal conferences and Pet Expo and that type of thing, is because those people are going to read about books. But that doesn't really cement the fact that you're going to sell books. So Sally is a miniature bull terrier. So a few years ago, there was a miniature bull terrier show in Ohio, okay? And it was over the weekend. It was like a 2-day show. And I contacted them. I was able to secure a table. My husband was like, we'll just go for the weekend. It'll be great. And I was like, I'm going to sell so many books because these are Sally's peeps, okay? They're all dogs that are just like her. They're all the snobby, bull terrier people, and it's going to be great. I didn't sell one book in 2 days. And I have no idea why. Because it was all bull terrier owners. That's it. It was all bull terrier owners. Maybe they didn't like to read. Maybe, I have no idea. But on the way there, I thought this is going to be the best show ever. We're going to sell the most books. And we sold no books. In fact, I gave a book away. So I was in the hole. But marketing is it's tough. I hate marketing, But if you don't market your book, it doesn't get out there, And you think that getting it into a bookstore is going to do it. Bookstores are actually the worst place to sell a book. Where's your biggest competition? It's in a bookstore, because that's all that's in there is books, So I've got the Sally books. I have some pet stores will take the Sally books, and I've had some success with that. I live in Grand Haven, and there's a lot of people that know of Sally in Grand Haven, so I can put them in different stores there. It does well in our bookstore because it's a really small bookstore, and because I've done presentations there. But otherwise, the first place authors want to put their books is in a bookstore. And I'm like, yeah, that's the worst place. I mean, you want to get it in there for sure, so you can tell people, hey, the book's at the bookstore. Amazon, I sell most of my books through Amazon. Getting the books in Amazon is helpful. But it's really a thinking game of where are my readers? Where are the people that care about the Sally book? I've also written another book that's called Quit Whining, Start Writing. And it's basically a book to get you to stop whining and start writing. Clever title, huh? And that's a book that, I'll take to different writing conferences or, look where I can sell them in mass numbers. Did that answer your question at all? Kinda, maybe, sorta? Yeah. Anybody else have a question? Doesn't even have to be about writing or publishing or. Yes. Mm. Sure. Yeah. So we've got, we came up with these clever little names. One is our basic, one is the Quill package. Get it? Quill, writing Quill. And with that package, you get, we do your cover, which we do the whole jacket. You do the front, the spine, and the back cover. We lay out your book. It's up to, I think, 200 pages. You can have so many pictures in there, black and white. What else do we do? We do the ISBN, the barcode, telephone conferences with our graphic designer. We also give you bookmarks, because bookmarks are great marketing tools, which sounds silly, but it is, because they're cheap and you can put them everywhere. And that package starts at $19.75. And then we get information for you on printing, because we work with a printer in Grand Rapids. And those printing prices are per book. And then we can either get it printed for you for that additional cost, or we give you the files and you can take it somewhere else. Most, I would say 99.9% of our clients always have us print it, have us print it, just because they don't know all the things that printers need. They need the bleed and all this other stuff that printers need, so it's just easier to go through us. So, and then our packages go up from there. And mostly what's in addition that makes a cost go up is marketing stuff, and we'll do posters, or we'll do, different things to help you promote your book. But we don't do any specific marketing. And I think our top package is $29, and that includes an individual meeting with our marketing person. And then, of course, our other package, which is the children's picture book, then that's totally separate, because that includes illustrations. And once you get into illustrations, then that's going to be a little more expensive, because then I'm paying my illustrator as well for doing work, getting it. All right, what else? Yes. Never. So the barcode is on the back of your book. Every book, there's a little barcode, so that when it's in, you're at the store and they just scan it, and that barcode tells them the price of the book and the publisher of the book. And then the ISBN, which is the national number that every book has, then it also will take them to that page at Bowker that has all the information about the book. And that's also readers, or libraries and bookstores can go to Bowker and get information about new books coming out, so they can order those if they want. But most, I hate to say all, but I'd say just about all bookstores, you have to have a barcode or they won't take your book. And they're really picky about who is publishing. So you're familiar with Amazon. So are you familiar with CreateSpace? So CreateSpace is Amazon's publisher, okay? And they do the same thing that we do. But they have a lot more packages, and they have individual packaging and, a la carte pricing. And so they're kind of our competition. But what we found is that a lot of bookstores will not take books that have been published by CreateSpace. And the way they know that is because when they run the barcode, CreateSpace shows up. And the reason they do that, from what I've been told, or what I understand, is because they're not real picky about the books that they're putting out. They're looking more at mass quantity than actual quality. And so they get a lot of books that aren't well written, that have really bad covers, and so they won't even, they won't take books in that have been written or created by CreateSpace, which was nice for us, because it keeps that competition out. But yeah. Yes? First person and third person. Why not? I would think that you'd probably have to do maybe different chapters. I'm trying to think how Jodi Picoult, she writes her books in first person, but it's a different first person in different chapters. And the beauty of self-publishing is that you can try things, you know, so you could try it out, write the book, then give it to a group of different people to read it and find out if they have trouble reading it, going back and forth between the first and third, and they could give you feedback on it. And if it worked, then I would say give it a shot. Yep. And you had a question, I know. Yeah, my business, I do run it. It's myself and my son, who actually lives in LA and is a stand-up comedian. And then my daughter lives in Vermont, helps me with the layout. And then I have a friend of my son's who does the illustrations. And then we have a marketing person and an editor. So we have about 5 or 6 people altogether. So it's really small. Yeah. I don't want a big company. It's too much work. Yes? Blech. That's what I'd say to it. I don't think that you're, I think that, pardon? Well, I think that there are gifted writers, I think. Stephen King, which I might have mentioned, he's my favorite writer, but he says, you know, being gifted, a gifted writer is not worth table salt. He said it's about sticking to it, you know, and working on that craft over and over and working to make it better. And so I do coaching, so I've coached several writers who have written books. And I had a guy come in, his therapist actually sent him to me and said, you know, you need to write your book. And he was addicted to opioids, and he had been in 8 different rehabs, okay, for his addiction. He was in a car accident and hurt his back, and that's how the whole thing got started, because he had to have these pain meds. And so the last rehab worked, and so that doctor had said, you need to write your book. And he came to me and said, you know, my doctor sent me there. I have no idea how to write a book. And we published his book, I think, 3 years ago. And he wrote it. I didn't write any of it. But it was just the starting of, okay, just start writing. I tell clients that they need to throw up on the page. Because we're all wired to be perfect. We have to write these perfect books and do this perfect, and that's just bullshit. I mean, we're not perfect. Nobody writes a perfect book. But that's the gremlin that's inside of our heads saying it's not perfect, it's not perfect, it's not perfect. So I always tell my clients what you have to do is you throw up on the page. Okay, so let's say you get the flu and you're sick to your stomach. And so you're gonna puke, and you don't say as you're gonna puke, oh wait, is that the right garbage container? You know, and is that the right place? And am I gonna throw up in the right way, or should I be quiet when you don't do any of that, you just throw up. You know, it's all out there. So when I say I want you to throw up on the page, I want you to just write and write and write and not worry about the grammar and whether it makes sense and all the other crap that gets in our head. You can tell I get very passionate about this. You just have to write it, because nobody writes a book and not edit it. Nobody. And if they tell you they do, they're lying. You gotta just get the book out without worrying about the grammar and the spelling and do I have enough paragraphs on the page, and should this be a chapter or that be a chapter? You just have to write the damn book. You get it out there. So you throw up the story on the page and you write it and you write it, and you don't even, like when you're writing a book or a long piece, that you can't write in one sitting, when you come back to it, you don't read what you've already written, which goes way past, I mean, that's what? When somebody told me that at first, I was like, that's ridiculous. Of course I have to read whatever I've already written. But when you read what you've already written, then you start editing, right? And you edit and you edit and you edit. So the time that you have planned to sit and write, by the time it's up, you don't have any new writing. You've just edited. That's it. So when you sit down to pick up where you are, you maybe read the last sentence, and then you write. And you don't add, once you get that whole book written, and I don't care what it is, I don't care if it's a chapbook of poetry, if it's fiction, if it's not fiction, once you have that whole book written, you are done. Then you put the book in a drawer. Or you put it, you shut the computer off after you've saved it, of course. And you don't look at it for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Enough time goes by so that you've kind of forgotten everything about it. And then you go back and you pull it out and you read it without editing. You just read it. And when you read it, you'll be like, damn, that's good. And then you'll be like, damn, that sucks. Because some of it will be really good and some of it will be horrible. But it's done. And that's where you start then to make it a good book. That's when you start. Then you read it again with a pencil in your hand. And that's when you start taking out things and figuring out what goes where. And then you do that, and then you do it another time, and then you do it another time. And you edit that book at least 3 or 4 times before you send it to an editor, or before you send it to a group of people that will read it for you and give their feedback. But we get caught up in this whole thing about writing a perfect book the first time. By the time that book is done and you're ready to hand it to a publisher, you are sick to death of it. Because you've read it so many times and you're like, I don't want to read this book again. I'm ready to write my next book. But never do we sit down and write. Okay, you're all college students, I get that. My daughter obviously was a college student and she always wrote papers the night before. So I know how that works. I was a college student and I always wrote them the night before. But when you write a book, it's not a paper. You're not going to write it the night before and turn it in. There's just no way. You're not going to write 300 pages by writing it the night before and turning it in. So you have to think different. You have to change that way of thinking that I'm going to write it all in one sitting. And once you do that, you free up those gremlins. Those gremlins are the ones who tell you you can't do stuff. Or you don't have time to write, or you don't have time to do this, or you don't, or you suck at that, or you can't. I call them those little gremlins. They get in my ear, tell me those negative things. So that's how you get rid of them. Well, actually, the way you get rid of them is telling them to get lost, put them in a drawer, and then you just sit down and write, and write, and write, and write. You throw up on the page. And you just write forward. I always say when you're writing, if you sit down to write, when you get up, however, if it's half an hour later, if it's an hour later, if you don't have something new written, then you weren't writing. You were editing, you were looking things up, you were on Facebook, you were, whatever you were doing, but you weren't writing. Because if you're writing when you get up, you've got new writing on the page. Handwritten on the computer, whatever. So that's way far away from publishing. Kind of got on a roll. I'm very passionate about that. So going back to your initial question, which was a long time ago about, being born a good writer or not, this person, Ken Starr is his name, and his book is called A Prescription for Addiction. And it's a really, really good book about his struggle with addiction, his family's struggle with addiction. This guy was shooting alcohol in his veins to get high. And this was 3 years ago that we wrote the book, and now all you hear about is the opioid epidemic. And he wrote this book, and he never thought that he'd be able to write this book. He had never written a book before. And it took a while, because in the middle of writing this book, he was hit by a drunk driver and ended up with a traumatic brain injury. And so he had to stop writing for a while. But then once he got back to the book. So Yeah, so I think that people, you might have a gift for writing, but I think that if you've never written a book, but you're passionate enough and you've got a topic and you really want to write it, that you can do it. I never thought I'd write a book about a dog. I didn't even like dogs before I got Sally. Seriously. I got that little dog from my husband. The dogs are gross. They lick stuff. They eat bad stuff. They puke. They're just they hump your leg. They're gross. They're just gross dogs. The dogs are gross. I grew up with, cats, which have their own grossness, but I like their attitude. Cats are like, yeah, screw you. I'll do what I want. And, dogs are like, hey, 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 But I fell in love with this silly little dog and started writing. I really think the editor of the magazine asked me to start writing this article because she's a cat person. She got so sick and tired of me talking about my dog all the time that she was like, if I can get her to write about it, then she'll stop talking about it. And then 12 years went by, and losing that dog, I was in bad shape. I was in very bad shape. But I have 4 books out of her, So it might be something that you don't even know that you want to write about, but you start writing about it, and pretty soon you're like, hey, here's my book. Okay, there's 2 minutes left by the clock that I'm watching up there. Any questions? Come on, you guys. 2 minutes. Yeah. Well, the editor of the magazine asked me if I wanted to write this column about my dog. And I thought, who's going to read this? It's my dog. Who cares about this dog except me? But I have to tell you that Sally has this huge following in West Michigan, a huge following in West Michigan. And we've sold books. I had someone from Johannesburg, South Africa, send me an email that they had the book and they loved it. It's my little dog, who cares? But people love to read those stories. They love reading, and some of the stories, okay, I'm really going to be vulnerable here, but I wrote this story because when I get out of the shower, my dogs come in and they lick the water off my legs. Okay, don't judge me. I love my dogs now. But I wrote that story and I thought, ooh, this is really putting myself out there. And I got so many emails from people saying, oh my gosh, I never would have told people that, but my cat does the same thing or my dog does the same thing. People love animals. They love their pets and they love hearing stories about them. And so once I started writing them and I started getting this, feedback, when Sally passed away last March, then in April is the Pet Expo in Grand Rapids. And I've been going to it for 10 years and usually brought Sally with me. And many people knew that by then that she had passed away, but a lot of people didn't. And I was pretty much a mess, but I thought, I've got to go to this. Because these people were supporting me all these years with buying the Sally book. And it was amazing to me. I still get goosebumps. Amazing to me how many people came up to me and said they were sorry. And how many people came up to me crying that said, we loved your stories and we felt like we knew you and Sally and your family. So your books, your stories do touch people. They do really reach out and touch people that you wouldn't expect. Okay, it's a minute over.